For 8 long years, my sister managed to ruin just about every big moment in my life. But the stunt she tried to pull at my wedding? That one ended up wrecking her own marriage in less than a day. Now, fast forward to me being 28, with my wedding set for about a year from now. I just sent out the invitations last week, and ever since then, things have been tense. My sister and parents, in particular, haven't exactly been supportive. They've been pushing back hard. Before I dive into the heart of what's going on, I need to rewind a bit and give some context. It all ties directly into the mess I'm dealing with now. My sister, Claire, is 33, and our relationship has always been complicated, to say the least. She has this habit of being sharp-tongued and downright cruel at times, something that still affects me to this day. I spent a good part of my life wanting to be close with her, craving that tight sibling bond, but she never showed the same interest. More often than not, she acted like I was just this annoying obligation she had to tolerate, doing whatever she could to keep her distance. Before I continue, don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss new and interesting stories. Put likes. But back to the story. Back when I was younger and a bit more hopeful, I thought maybe, just maybe, I could win her over. I looked up to her, honestly. She was like this larger-than-life figure in my eyes, and I really believed we could grow into having a solid, loving relationship. Claire was always the type to chase the spotlight. Attention just seemed to follow her around. I accepted that as just who she was. Maybe I was fooling myself, but I truly thought we'd eventually become close. The moment reality finally hit me was when she told me I wasn't invited to her wedding. Her reason? It was going to be an adults-only event, so I didn't make the cut. The kicker? Her wedding was literally scheduled just a week before my 18th birthday. I couldn't help but laugh at how ridiculous it was. I even begged her to bend the rules just a little, because honestly, the whole situation was absurd. But she wouldn't budge. In her eyes, I was still a kid. And it wasn't like the venue had any age restrictions or alcohol being served, none of that. There was absolutely no practical reason for her to exclude me. The only conclusion I could come to was that she simply didn't want me there. I tried everything I could to change her mind, but it was no use. And to make matters worse, my parents stayed completely out of it. They didn't step in or try to smooth things over. That's when I started to pull away from Claire. Whether she noticed or just didn't care, I'm still not sure. But honestly, I think it's more likely that she didn't care. Our relationship turned into something distant and awkward. I barely know her husband, and we only really see each other during family gatherings. There's no real conversation or one-on-one connection. She has 2 kids who I care about, but if I'm being honest, I don't have a strong bond with them either. Claire has never taken the time to reach out to me personally or invite me over. The last real effort I made was when her kids were born. I tried to connect, to be involved, but she brushed me off like it didn't matter. Eventually, I stopped trying and decided to give my time to the family members who actually showed they cared. All of this backstory matters because it sets the stage for what's going on right now. So, I got engaged, and from the start, my fiancé and I agreed. We wanted a child-free wedding. We picked the date and mailed out the invitations early, making it crystal clear that it was going to be adults only. Claire got her invite just like everyone else. I was feeling good, checking things off the wedding planning list, when out of nowhere, something happened that made me feel like I had to talk about it. A few days ago, Claire called me up, completely furious. She started yelling, saying I had to be joking. At first, I didn't even know what she was talking about. I asked her to calm down and explain what was wrong. Between all her shouting and frustration, I finally figured it out. She was mad because we weren't allowing kids at the wedding. Can you believe that? The same sister who had her own kid-free wedding was suddenly outraged that I was doing the exact same thing. I kept asking my sister if she was actually being serious or if maybe I was just missing something. But nope, she confirmed it, irritated as ever. She really was upset that we decided not to allow kids at the wedding. I reminded her, as calmly as I could, that this was my wedding, my fiancé, and I were organizing it the way we wanted, and part of that meant keeping it adults only. We had made that decision together, and it wasn't up for debate. That's when Claire completely lost it. She blew up at me, calling me selfish and immature for leaving out her innocent little nephews. I kept my cool and explained that most of the kids in the family are under 5. They'd barely even realize they were missing anything. Plus, let's be honest, we didn't want toddlers running around grabbing stuff or getting into things they shouldn't. And with an open bar planned, it just didn't feel like a kid-friendly environment. All the relatives with young children have babies or toddlers, and anyone who's been around that age group knows you can't keep an eye on them every single second. It's not their fault. Kids are just unpredictable sometimes. Instead of risking chaos or stress during our big day, we figured it was easier to skip that issue altogether. But apparently, that was the absolute worst thing I could have said, because Claire took it personally. She accused me of calling her kids wild and out of control. I told her flat out I never said anything like that. Her comeback? If her kids weren't going to cause trouble, then they should be the exception. I explained that we weren't making exceptions for anyone, because if we did it for her, then what was stopping others from asking the same? I've got cousins and close friends who'd feel hurt if Claire got to bring her kids, and they couldn't bring theirs. It wouldn't be fair. I laid all of that out for her, trying to be as reasonable as possible, but she still wasn't having it. The whole thing escalated to the point where I finally snapped a bit. I told her she had no right to be mad at me for throwing a child-free wedding when she had done the exact same thing. I reminded her how I wasn't even invited to her wedding, her own sister. I was just 1 week shy of turning 18, and she didn't let me come. At least I was only leaving out young children. She had excluded an almost adult sibling. Well, she did not take kindly to hearing that. She started yelling again, claiming she finally saw the real reason behind my decision. According to her, I was being petty, spiteful, and childish, trying to get back at her for something that happened years ago. She called me unhinged and said I was only doing this to hurt her. I was about to explain that none of this had anything to do with her when, click, she hung up. I haven't reached out since, and from my side, it's been total silence. But Claire? She's been lighting up my phone with all kinds of nasty messages. And now she's dragged our parents into it too. They've started calling me and adding to the pressure. My mom and dad are saying maybe a no-kids wedding isn't such a great idea after all, that I'm being cold-hearted for excluding my nephews. Yep, the same parents who had no issue with me being left out of Claire's wedding are now acting like I'm the unreasonable one. They keep telling me not to ruin my relationship with her and that this is just a small favor I should grant her. I honestly don't see how this is a small favor. It's not just about Claire, it's about the entire guest list. And now I'm mad at my parents too. I talked everything through with my fiancé, and thankfully, he's just as firm about the guest list as I am. He doesn't want to start making exceptions either, because it would stir up drama on his side of the family as well. Honestly, he's beyond frustrated with how my sister and parents are acting. He knows the history, and it annoys him that they're coming down on me for doing exactly what Claire did with her own wedding. His family is fully on board with the no-kids policy. He's completely behind me on this, and even said he'd prefer if Claire didn't show up at all. We both see what's happening here. My family is trying to emotionally manipulate me, and that's just not okay. Look, I love my nephews, even if I'm not particularly close to them. But we made the rules clear, and they apply to everyone, no exceptions. At this point, I've seriously started thinking about just eloping. And honestly, I would have done it already if it weren't for my fiancé's family wanting to celebrate properly. My fiancé's family hasn't done anything wrong, and I don't want them to miss out on their own son's big day just because my side is stirring up drama. But with all this family tension, I'm honestly starting to feel unsure about even inviting my own relatives. It's hard to stay excited about a wedding when every phone call turns into an argument. The messages and comments have been pouring in, so many that I just can't reply to everyone individually. I figured I'd use this little update to clear up a few things people keep asking about. I'll go into more detail in a longer update later, but for now, here are some of the recurring points I wanted to address. First off, I knew some folks would criticize us for going with an adults-only wedding. And honestly, that's fine. I stand by our decision. I don't think there's anything wrong with wanting a grown-up event. If we had teenage cousins or older kids in the mix, they'd absolutely be welcome. But every single minor in the family is under the age of 5. Let's not pretend like little kids can't make things complicated. Weddings are long, tiring, and frankly boring for kids that young. None of them would enjoy sitting through a ceremony, let alone a reception. And sending them home right after the vows would feel rude, like they were an afterthought. That's why we decided not to include them at all. It just wouldn't be fair to them or their parents. Now, about my sister's reaction when I pointed out her hypocrisy, she had this odd way of justifying it. According to her, it was totally fine for her wedding to be child-free because, at the time, no one in the family had kids yet. But since now most of our cousins do have children, I'm apparently supposed to bend the rules and let everyone bring them along. Looking back, I guess she was right about one thing. I probably was the only underage person who would have been at her wedding. None of our cousins had babies back then, and her friends weren't exactly settling down that early either. I was the youngest person in the whole family, and she still didn't make an exception for me. And what really gets me now is realizing how my parents just rolled with it at the time. I begged them to talk to her, to at least try and get her to let me come. But they brushed me off, said it was her wedding, her choice, and they couldn't interfere. Funny how that tune has changed now that it's my turn to plan the guest list. Some of you also asked how the rest of our family is reacting, my cousins, friends, etc. Honestly, they've all been super supportive. Not one complaint. They live nearby and have already started figuring out childcare for the big day. We gave them nearly a full year's notice, so they've got more than enough time to make arrangements. Truth be told, I think some of them are secretly looking forward to a night out without the kids. It's a rare chance for them to kick back, relax, and enjoy themselves without constantly being in parent mode. Update 1. I've gotten a mix of feedback overall, but the harshest criticism tends to come from folks who flat out dislike adults-only weddings. And to be honest, I just don't get that mindset. Why is it that some people act like their kids need to be at every event? Do they try to bring their toddlers into 21+ bars too? Some spaces are just meant for adults, and that's okay. Let's be real here, young kids can be disruptive. It's not their fault. They're just little. And rather than risk having them act out during important moments, we figured the kindest solution was to simply not include them. This isn't about hating kids or wanting to exclude them for fun. It's just a practical decision, based on what we feel is best for our wedding. And let's face it, those kids won't remember any of it anyway. They'd be bored out of their minds. And bored toddlers? Well, we all know how that turns out. So for those saying kids need to be at every single event, maybe check that expectation. It's the same logic my sister's using, and it's not helping. Oh, and for the people who tried to throw my sister's wedding back at me, saying I shouldn't complain about being excluded since I'm now excluding others, let me remind you, I was almost 18 at the time. I wasn't some unruly child. I'd been to several weddings by then, starting at age 14, and I always behaved myself. I understood the etiquette. I was old enough to sit quietly through a ceremony and enjoy the reception without needing a babysitter. If there were any teenagers in our family now, I would have happily invited them. But that's not the case. The kids I'm talking about are toddlers and preschoolers. So no, this isn't the same thing. Anyway, that's my 2 cents. I just needed to share my side of things because I'm not going to keep responding to the same arguments over and over. And to those of you who reached out with thoughtful advice and kind words, thank you. You've brought up some great points, especially the idea that Claire might be stirring up drama just to stay in the spotlight. I've honestly wondered about that. She's never liked having a sister and always acted like she had to compete for attention. I think my parents picked up on that too, but instead of dealing with it, they just let her have her way. That's probably why my parents keep siding with her and asking me to just give in. At least, that's how it seems to me. Over the years, Claire has managed to turn plenty of my special moments into background noise for her own drama. Looking back, I honestly think she chose her wedding date intentionally, just a week before my 18th birthday, so that the spotlight would stay firmly on her. In our family, turning 18 is a big deal. We usually celebrate it in a big way, with everyone making a fuss over the birthday person. But I never got that celebration. Everyone was exhausted after her wedding, emotionally and financially, and my parents didn't have the time or money to throw me the party we'd talked about for years. That was just the start. She announced her first pregnancy on my 21st birthday, and her second shortly after I landed my first full-time job. It's like every time something significant happens in my life, she swoops in with some major announcement and completely derails it. I never really pieced it together before, but after reading some of the comments, I started to reflect, and yeah, there's definitely a pattern. Maybe all this wedding drama isn't just about the kids. Maybe she's stirring things up because she wants to be the center of attention again. I'm exhausted by her behavior. Some people have even suggested that I consider rescinding her invitation altogether. And honestly, it's something my fiancé and I are now seriously considering. The main reason we haven't done it yet is because of my parents. They would absolutely lose it if I didn't invite their golden child. And of course, if I go through with that, I risk igniting a whole new wave of family conflict, with more relatives feeling like they need to pick sides. Still, it's on the table. We're thinking it through. Now, my parents want to have a big sit-down meeting with the whole family, just the 4 of us. Their idea is that if we can all talk it out face-to-face, we might find some middle ground. They're convinced we'll walk away from that conversation with hugs, smiles, and a good old family compromise. I hate to burst their bubble, but I'm not changing the plan. This is my wedding, and I'm done apologizing for setting reasonable boundaries. If that meeting turns into another pressure session, it might be the moment I rescind their invitation too. I'm not playing referee in a game I never asked to be part of. Update 2. I just got back from the so-called family meeting, and wow, that went south faster than I expected. My parents were hopeful, convinced we'd come to some kind of agreement if we could just sit and talk. But surprise, absolutely nothing changed. My sister was on the attack from the second she walked in. She launched into yet another tirade, yelling about how I had the audacity to exclude her precious children from the wedding. And here's the thing that really gets me, she acts like this is all about her kids. But it's not. It never has been. It's about her need to be the center of every story. If I'm being honest, I doubt she even wanted to manage her children during the wedding. Most likely, she would have let them run around doing whatever they pleased while she ignored the chaos. That way, she could dominate the event without having to share the attention. I tried again to calmly explain our reasoning. I made it clear I wasn't doing this to be cruel. I wasn't attacking her or her children, but she refused to listen. She just kept yelling. Meanwhile, my parents sat there looking increasingly uncomfortable. They saw how I stayed composed while Claire spiraled. Eventually, I told her firmly but politely that no amount of shouting or guilt-tripping was going to change my mind. This was final. That's when she came up with a new demand. If I insisted on not allowing her kids, then I should find and pay for a babysitter. After all, it was my wedding, so apparently that made it my problem. I laughed, because honestly, what else could I do? I told her straight up that I wasn't going to cover that expense. It's not my responsibility, especially when she can more than afford it herself. I know for a fact she hires sitters regularly for date nights, so this isn't some impossible task for her. But no, she doesn't want to pay because this isn't her choice, it's mine. She argued that finding a sitter on such short notice would be a nightmare. That's when I reminded her, bluntly, that she had nearly an entire year to plan. Unless she's moving through life at a glacial pace, that's more than enough time. My parents, trying to play peacekeepers, offered to cover the babysitting costs themselves. I thought that might finally resolve things, but no, Claire refused their money too. Of course she did, because this was never really about logistics or money. It was always about control. Yeah, she was definitely being stubborn, plain and simple. Claire wanted me to pay, not just financially, but emotionally too, all because I didn't consider her feelings about my wedding. My parents even tried to offer a compromise, suggesting her husband stay home with the kids so she could come alone. Of course, that idea didn't sit well with her either. Eventually, after what felt like hours of going in circles, I hit my limit. I was emotionally drained, and Claire's constant outbursts had completely worn me down. So I just said it, calmly but firmly, I wasn't changing anything about our wedding plans. If she couldn't handle it, she didn't have to come. That was her choice. Well, that set her off again. She started yelling, and, no surprise, my parents jumped in to take her side. They told me I should want my sister at my wedding. I let out a quiet laugh and told them all, look, if you have a problem with our plans, with how we're choosing to celebrate, then none of you need to come. It's that simple. Now I'm back home, and I've filled in my fiancé on everything. He's even more upset than I am. He's been frustrated for a while now by how entitled my parents act, and this just added fuel to the fire. Since then, my phone's been blowing up with texts from both my parents and my sister, but I haven't looked at any of them yet. I needed space. Update 3. Before diving into this next part, I just want to say how much your kind and thoughtful comments have meant to me. I was reaching a breaking point, not even excited to plan my own wedding anymore. It felt like every step forward was met with more drama, more problems, more stress. My sister's nonsense had drained all the joy out of what should have been a special time. Honestly, I came this close to eloping with my fiancé. I was literally about to suggest we let his family know and just skip the whole big event. But then I read what so many of you wrote, and you opened my eyes. You were absolutely right. I shouldn't punish the people who have supported us just because my sister's being difficult. Most of our friends and extended family have done nothing wrong. And more importantly, you helped me see that Claire had already managed to make the wedding about her. That was such a light bulb moment. I realized she was already succeeding at hijacking the spotlight, and I was letting her. That realization hit hard. So I decided it was time to talk to my parents again, but this time, without Claire there. I asked my fiancé to come with me, both for emotional support and because he had a few things he wanted to say as well. The meeting wasn't some peaceful, easy conversation. Far from it. I was brutally honest this time. No filters, no sugarcoating. I cried. My parents cried. It was raw and messy, but it needed to happen. I laid it all out for them. Every time Claire had taken over one of my milestones. Every time she'd pulled the attention back to herself. I reminded them of how they refused to convince her to let me come to her wedding. And yet here they were, asking me to make exceptions for her kids. I told them straight up that their behavior had pushed me to the point of considering canceling the wedding altogether. My fiancé also spoke up. He made it clear how strongly he supported me, and how sad it was to watch me losing all excitement for something we both wanted. His perspective helped. Hearing it from someone outside the family seemed to hit my parents in a different way. My mom broke down crying. My dad started pleading with me not to go through with eloping. And for the first time, it actually seemed like they got it. They finally started to see how Claire's resentment had shaped our whole family dynamic. That they had coddled her because she always resented having a sibling in the first place. That they had tiptoed around her feelings for so long. They never noticed how unfair they were being to me. It's sad, really. The level of jealousy and selfishness Claire has shown over the years is hard to wrap my head around. I've had enough. But finally, after that long, emotional talk, my parents said they understood. My fiancé's words really helped shift their perspective too. They admitted they hadn't realized how deeply this had hurt me, not just now, but over the years. They begged us not to elope. They said they genuinely wanted to be at my wedding and enjoy it, especially since so many of my other accomplishments had been overshadowed by Claire's drama. They even admitted something I wasn't expecting. They said they were tired of it too. Tired of Claire constantly turning everything into a competition. Tired of her being the center of every story. For the first time in a long while, I think they might actually mean it. They promised to change. And honestly, I hope they do. When it comes to my sister now, I've honestly reached the point where I just don't care what she thinks. I've already started drafting a letter to cut all contact with her, and I'm officially revoking her wedding invitation. My fiancé and I talked it through thoroughly, and we're both on the same page. The best part? My parents are backing us up now too. At the end of the day, Claire may be family by blood, but if she wants to be at my wedding, she's the one who should be making sacrifices, not me. I'm not inviting royalty here. I was trying to include a spoiled adult who's officially lost her spot at our celebration. Update 4. A bunch of people have messaged me asking for an update, especially those expecting even more chaos. So yes, there was some drama after I delivered the news to Claire, but honestly, things have been surprisingly calm on my end. I expected her to lash out, and of course she did, but this time, it actually hit her harder than it hit me. Curious how that happened? Well, that's why I'm here with this update. Short version? My sister's annex finally caught up with her, and now her marriage is on the rocks. As promised, I wrote and sent both a text and an email to Claire. I made it clear that she was officially uninvited from my wedding, and that I would no longer be in contact with her at all. I explained, as calmly as I could, that I was done with the drama, done with the emotional outbursts, and done letting her steamroll over my milestones. And just like clockwork, she blew up. I wasn't even surprised at this point. But what did catch me off guard was how offended she was. I mean, considering how often she's made it obvious she doesn't want me around, you'd think she'd be glad I was cutting ties. Nope. She was outraged. First, she ran to our parents, complaining that I was ignoring her texts. But this time, they didn't take her side, they actually stood by me. That was a big shock to her. So, naturally, she went crying to the rest of the family, painting me as some heartless, jealous, and selfish monster who had uninvited her for no reason. At first, a few relatives did reach out, trying to get me to be the bigger person and work things out. But then, everything flipped. One of my cousins, who had been keeping quiet this whole time, spoke up in the family group chat and dropped a bomb. Turns out, Claire had been planning to hijack my wedding all along. According to my cousin, right after I got engaged, Claire told her she was trying to convince her husband to go for baby number 3, just so she could show up pregnant and steal the spotlight again. She wanted to one-up me on my big day and had even joked about how proud she was of her plan. She literally bragged about ruining my wedding. There's no competition on my end. I've never tried to compete with her. But Claire? She's been treating me like a rival our whole lives. So when she realized she wouldn't get the chance to pull her little stunt, she lost it. Once my cousin spilled the truth, everything spiraled. The family turned on her. Even my parents were furious, especially because she didn't even try to deny it. Instead, Claire doubled down and tried to justify her behavior. That just made things worse. Apparently, her husband didn't take it well either. From what my parents have told me, he was already frustrated with her for acting like this around his own family. Claire had a habit of turning everything into a power struggle, even with his sister and cousins. This was the final straw. He told her flat out that she either gets help or they're done. She went running back to our parents, sobbing and blaming me for her marriage falling apart. Yep, somehow, that's also my fault now. She even tried calling me from a different number to yell at me again. The second I heard her voice, I hung up. I wasn't about to let her drag me back into the chaos. Thankfully, that was the last time she tried. From what I've heard, her husband put his foot down and said enough was enough. Right now, they're in couples therapy and sleeping in separate rooms. I get the feeling he's only sticking around for the kid's sake. Apparently, he's been fed up for a while, especially since her behavior has strained his relationships with his own relatives. Honestly, I hope she does take the therapy seriously. I hope she uses it as a wake-up call and finally does the work to become a better version of herself. But that's on her, not me. As for me, things are finally looking up. It's peaceful. The wedding is back on track and drama-free. Update 5. I can't believe I'm writing this, but I'm married. Yep. It's been a whole year since I posted my first update here. And let me tell you, time really flies when you're juggling wedding planning, daily life, and trying to keep the peace. But we made it. And the wedding? It was everything we dreamed of. Before I wrap this up, though, I do have one more thing to share. Yep, it's about Claire, and what she tried to pull on the actual wedding day. So, my sister is officially divorced now. She and her husband tried to make it work for a while, but in the end, it just wasn't happening. After everything was finalized, her ex actually reached out to my parents. He wanted to share his side of things, and honestly, I respected that. He told them he really had tried, but that living with Claire had just become too overwhelming. Apparently, she didn't put any real effort into therapy. In fact, she made things worse. At one point, she even threatened him, told him that if he dared to leave her, she'd try to get involved with all his friends just to spite him. That was the final nail in the coffin. He filed for divorce soon after. But now, let me tell you what she did on my wedding day. First, early that morning, she slashed the tires on my parents' car. Yes, seriously. She tried to stop them from coming to the wedding. But luckily, they got a ride from a cousin who lived nearby. Later, some neighbors shared security footage with them, and yep, it was her. At first, we weren't sure, but the neighbors had no doubt. It was Claire. And as if that weren't enough, someone called in a bomb threat during the ceremony. The whole venue had to be evacuated, and we were stuck outside for almost 2 hours. It was surreal, standing there in my wedding dress, surrounded by confused guests, just trying to stay calm. But once it was cleared and we were allowed back inside, we picked up right where we left off. In the end, that little hiccup didn't ruin the day. Not even close. What mattered most was that I married the love of my life, and our guests had a great time. That's what stuck with everyone, not the drama. Now here's a twist for you. We actually invited Claire's ex-husband to the wedding. My parents asked us to. They wanted to keep things cordial for the sake of the grandkids. Since it was Claire's custody day, he didn't even have to hire a sitter. It worked out. We're not sure if Claire found out he was there, but he suspects she didn't. He had no reason to tell her what he was doing that day, and he certainly wasn't about to give her another excuse to explode. Still, it is possible she somehow got wind of it and acted out because of that. But now here's the part that made me laugh. At the reception, I noticed Claire's ex chatting pretty animatedly with one of my friends. Nothing out of line, just noticeable. When I asked her about it later, she claimed they were just talking. Casual stuff. But I've known this friend a long time, and I know when something's more than just talking. Turns out I was right. Just recently, she admitted that he'd asked her out on a date. I couldn't help but laugh. After everything, it would be hilarious if I ended up going to his wedding in a few years, this time as a guest, actually sitting at the ceremony I never got to attend when he married my sister. Life's funny that way. Anyway, that's the full story. If you made it this far, thanks for sticking with me. This journey's been long and wild, but I finally feel like I'm standing on solid ground again. And hey, if you enjoyed the story, don't forget to leave a comment and hit that subscribe button. I've got more stories coming soon. Until then, take care and be kind to yourselves.